Jasper, welcome. By the way, thank you so much for getting on this because there are so many myths around content knowledge bases, content libraries, knowledge bases, so many myths that I hear on a daily basis.
Yeah. So I used to lead a global enterprise sales team. The kind of story that got me into all of this at the start was when I was 19, I convinced my boss to go after an RFP, and he was like, no, those things are rigged. You can't be doing those things. They're a waste of time. So I kind of spent my weekend and my nights going away at it, not knowing how hopeless these things were, to be invited at the end against 9 other vendors. But we actually won that. Probably testament to the product more than it was to my writing, maybe, at the time. We won that opportunity, and then it was like, oh, RFPs could be a real thing. So then we scaled it from doing none to doing them globally in the UK and the US and Australia. And yeah, it was a big thing. We did, I think, nearly 30% of the company's revenues started to come through there. Hired hundreds of people, closed massive groups, Starbucks, all of that kind of thing. So it was an awesome journey. But the worst part of the enterprise sales process remained the RFP process. Yeah. So unfortunately, as I led the team, I kind of became the de facto person, also because I decided that's it, we're getting a tool. So I implemented one of the vendors available at the time and then deployed that. And then it was like, oh, great. So now I've got to manage this. So we kind of split it up a little bit. We're going to have someone in security, manage kind of that whole process and manage all of their SMEs, and then same on the product side and such. But we didn't actually carve it out as a dedicated proposal function. It was kind of like a combination of self-service into the platform and then me and the other heads managing our portions of the content.
Yeah, I think a lot of proposal people, because we are often working in proposal teams, we don't realize that when people don't have proposal teams, it often is the sales leader, these RFPs. And I've seen this quite a bit where you have CSOs and CROs responding to RFPs. And before you built AutoRFP, there was obviously a moment where you looked at how RFPs were being done and you thought, this is not the way to do it. We can do it better. I'm wondering what that moment looked like for you.
Yeah, there was a ton of stuff. I think we built a bunch of internal sales tools where we're using different types of AI, like AI search and chatbots and all of this kind of thing, kind of before it was cool. But it was very cool for us. So there was that, knowing that this kind of technology is available, just kind of as an undertone. And then, your inbox starts to fill up with oh, you've got to review this content. You've got to review this content, review your company name. And I was just what are we doing here? And then putting all that effort in to maintain the library. And then it would autofill. Oh, congratulations. We've, magically autofilled 4% of your RFP. It's I know there's 80% of it in here. It's all in here. Just stop. And then another time that really just popped it for me was when there was all of these questions about our mobile app. And I was like, great, let's pop that in. Let's run the autofill thing. Responded with our mobile overview to 12 questions in a row. We can just do some maths that we don't need the same answer 12 times in a row.
I think we've all been there. But it's really hard for us to switch how we want to do things now to the way things can be done in a better way. And so I'm wondering, what's the biggest thing or the one thing that proposal managers and content managers believe now that is just not correct anymore?
It's that your library's a good idea for a lot of things, that your SMEs are actually going to log in and update it, that it's maybe the best approach for all of your content. I think a library is a part of a healthy way to manage content, but it's certainly not the only part anymore. And I think a lot of organizations just have a content library approach, and that's literally it.
Yeah. I'm wondering, when you get pushback about how AutoRFP does things, what do you have to say to explain that to people to kind of really understand that things have changed?
Yeah. It's just the result now. We just show people during a test how it can work. And even for us, honestly, coming from other systems we'd used, our initial thoughts on how this would work and how the technology would work. We budgeted, I remember this sprint, we budgeted, okay, cool, we've got an idea. We're going to put in this new categorization system in about 4 weeks of time, really going hard at it. And it's the only thing that I think we've spent more than double of what we thought. And we ended up going 12 weeks and looping in more people on it, because as we spoke to more people, we realized how this actually needs to work is very different to how you can even kind of conceptualize it. which is interesting. But like broadly speaking, it's have your library, have documentation pulling from your different SMEs, from the systems that they actually work in, and a few other bits and pieces.
I just think it's really tough to do without actually seeing an actual, like, how it can be done in practice. So
Yeah,
I'm
definitely.
with you. Like, I think it's almost I've been a knowledge manager for a really long time. Most of my career, it's always been a teeny part of what I've been doing. And so
Mm.
it was hard to, like, get my head around that things can change and it can be different and better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think it's making it familiar as well. So you can like the change management of that is pretty intense. So that's very valid. Yeah.
Yeah, and when I talk with people just about kind of how they can update things, I tend to see two types of people. It's the ones who are really excited because this is what they're doing in their nights and their weekends, and they're like, there has to be a better way. And then there are people who are just, no, there's no way you could change that. And I just see two very, very different sides and two very different types of people who are managing
100%. And
content.
we're in the gray area, right? And that gray area will persist. Like before, maybe
Yeah.
only 12 months ago, this was very, very hard to do
Oh,
with
yeah.
the available tech. But now it's just better and better and better.
A lot of people are incredibly worried and understandably about AI hallucinations. So they really want to make sure that the content that's coming in isn't making stuff up, especially because when they have to respond to these RFPs, their reputation is on the line. There technically could be some legal implications if they're lying to a certain extent within these
Yeah.
RFP responses. So do you see that as a risk for most content libraries, these AI hallucinations?
You've got these newer systems that will on average generate more of the responses, right? So they'll have more powerful AI, so they get a better match rate. It's not that 4%, right? It's something a lot higher than that. The risk outside of hallucination, and what people actually describe as hallucination that isn't, is the AI not understanding the context, where it's trying to sell one of your other products and not this product. Or it's like, oh no, it's looked at this thing from Germany, because it just has no context of what's going on.
Yeah.
So that's something that's underrated. Yeah, organizing that. And then the systems actually need to be able to present the context that that file sits in to whatever's going to ultimately respond to it. So that's been a lot of our work. Is like, okay, cool. The AI is actually very good at not hallucinating. I think like our benchmarks used to run that there were 83% of the responses would be factually accurate. So that's a huge delta. And
Yeah.
then maybe 6 months ago, it was like 99%, which is pretty good. Like you're above a threshold. But now we're getting into like further nines. We are getting 99.95. And I think Google's pretty close in particular to knocking hallucination completely out of the park, as long as you have
Yeah.
content that you're generating off, not just like asking it to write an executive summary without giving it the context it needs.
When we're looking for new tools to better our content library and not give us AI hallucinations, what should we be looking for to make sure that we are getting a tool that does this in this way? Because I know not all of them do.
Yeah, I think some tools might be very simple. It depends on what scale you're doing it and with how complex your like offerings are. Like if I'm a smaller business and I'm selling mostly one thing, let's say I do like local council lawn services and that's what I do, then I can use like a really simple tool like a ChatGPT and it's not going to get confused. I can have a Google Drive and I can keep it cheap and easy. It's when you get into things like larger offerings where you have multiple products and you sell in different markets, then I think the underrated thing, everyone looks at like all of the cool kind of features, but what actually is going to matter a lot is how the categorization system works and just how that
Yeah.
information is stored. Or when you're integrating with other systems, does it pull the context that was in this folder and not like some other random folder to get the generations? Because otherwise it's just going to be looking everywhere and kind of just put it all into a big pit rather than
Yeah.
kind of taking across what you had nicely set up in a SharePoint or nicely set up in Google Drive or something else.
I should ask you a few questions, like if they're myths or not, because I think this kind of ties into exactly what you're saying. And one of these are the common industry beliefs. This is what I hear every day. And a year ago, I would have been like, heck yes, this is necessary. So the first one I want to ask you is you have to maintain a library of responses no matter what, always.
Yeah, absolutely not. Yeah, so I think quite a lot of our customers don't have a library, which is crazy, right? Until it isn't, until they rely on just the last 3 months of their projects, plus integrated with all the different data sources across the organization. and they don't have a dedicated content manager or RFP team. So that's in reality the best thing that they can do, because if they were to build a library, they wouldn't maintain it. And that's what they've already tried before. So I was saying, like, yes, over 75% of people moving from old systems don't even bring their libraries with them, which is like horrific. But that kind of proves the point, right? That you actually don't need a library necessarily. It depends on your reality, how much resources you have.
Do you think that there are reasons why some people need a library? Or is it just in general, no?
You definitely need them in certain industries, financial services. If I'm selling funds and financial products, then that's really critical. There's a lot of nuance, and I could talk your ear off for 5 hours about how like we manage that in a new way now. But like you definitely need a source of truth for certain numbers to prevent you, going to jail potentially, or getting slapped with some huge fine, or just getting fired. So yeah, no, very, very fair that they maintain a library. But for software companies, for things like that, that's where it's a case by case basis. But like a lot of them don't need them, and smaller ones probably shouldn't have them.
My next myth that I hear all the time is more content equals better results.
Yeah. I think it's false in the case of a library, right?
Yeah.
And depending on system, if you've got to manage duplicates and everything, and you have all of this content, then you have to manage it all. So that's why we kind of like this light library approach. You should maintain as small a library as possible. Maybe it only covers 80% of your common questions. Don't do that last 20%, because you're going to end up with 5 times more content just to cover that last 20. But that's like a good way to think about it, is just coverage. And then I would say definitely it's awesome to have a huge historical backlog of all of the projects you've worked on. You don't want to like unnecessarily just shred those or not have those accessible. Those are really cool to pull on. So if you can organize them centrally in a way where not everyone's kind of having their own folders and things, like obviously that is actually very, very cool. So that's where we say like, bring like hundreds of previous projects through as well, if that's, within your resources to do it, because that can really help. You can find those really niche answers, or, Gary that used to work here 2 years ago, every time he went into telco, he just somehow knew their terminology and spoke their language after working there for 20 years.
Yeah, we all have it, Gary. Another part of this is a lot of the newer tools today, they are connecting not just to like a library of content, but they also want to connect to like their knowledge management system that's outside of like the proposal management content system. They want to connect with their CRM. They want to connect with the World Wide Web. They want to connect with basically like anything, like the marketing tools, the product marketing tools within the company. So they have access to everything. And so I'm wondering, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing?
You have to take a little bit of credit for this as well, because we spoke not a year ago, but before systems were doing this, or every system were doing this, and talking about how SMEs are pretty much inaccessible and how it makes a lot of sense to connect in these systems. And now it's pretty much industry standard. It's a great idea. What's important for every company is to think about, is this a fallback or is this actually our source of truth? So for a tech company, the help docs might be the source of truth. For your previous responses, or just stuff that's available on the World Wide Web, we've got some Salesforce resellers. Salesforce is just a fallback for them, where they haven't answered that for a customer like this before. They need something to work. That's actually a really important differentiation there, and how the system ranks that content. Yeah, it's pretty important.
So let's say I'm a knowledge person, a content library person in a proposal team, and I get a new system. I can connect to everything. What should I be connecting to? What should I ignore? Is it not about the tools, or is it more about what content is good?
You definitely don't want to dump the whole thing. We've had people try and upload 13,000 files, and it's right. That's like the infrastructure is going to manage that. What's not going to manage that though is that your product has changed. In 3 years, there was this monumental change where you merged companies and changed all your name. You don't want to be dumping all of that into the AI. Sometimes people will have a cutoff point where they were writing pretty terrible responses. Then they took it seriously. They got a content manager. They did all of this 2 years ago, right? And now they're evolving. That's probably a good cutoff point. So think about it in terms of the recency of that information. And I would definitely still always lean quality over quantity, even though it feels like you're training AI. A lot of these systems work on an architecture that won't actually benefit from more.
Yeah.
They're already pre-cooked. They're baked the way they are. So they just need the context from you that is correct. And then with that, you've also got the context of that of that information. So just making sure that it makes sense in the context of an RFP, and you're not just pulling in random docs from HR policies that are useful internal, but not at all within the RFP context.
No, I think it's like writing. It's easier to do more than less. So if I want to connect to everything, that's so much easier than being really picky. But I think what you're saying is it makes sense to be picky. You're going to have better responses if you are a little bit picky about what goes in.
Yeah. And I think a good way to maybe approach it is to connect one or two of the core systems first, like maybe a Confluence or a Zendesk or an Intercom or like a help thing first, and then use that and then see what the gaps are. And then go, great, I'm going to go into SharePoint or Google Drive, probably like a lesser quality source on average, depending, and then use that to fill the gaps and just get where you need to be. It's really hard to kind of reverse engineer, oh, what should I take out? What should I do? It's much just like easier to add and add and add.
Okay, I love that. Thank you. I'm telling everybody to do that now. My next myth is SMEs must contribute to a central RFP system. Have you seen anywhere where people don't really need to talk with their SMEs for whatever reason in terms of a content library? Maybe that content lives somewhere else, like in a technical documentation. Is there any situation where that's not really needed?
There's a lot of teams where it's next to never. There are certain teams and certain orgs will keep very, very good documentation, and then the sales team is just able to purely build off that. So the sales team is never searching, or the proposal team, etc., is never searching for facts because they are actually there and updated.
Yeah.
And someone is even managing kind of the content for that at a different level. But I'd say you're still going to loop them in from time to time, maybe less so on the content review side and more so on a live RFP where something really strange has come through and it's a once off. It's not necessarily something you'd want to like add to the library or maintain.
And one last myth is you need a single source of truth.
Yeah, that's a fun one. I mean, you have this single source of truth concept in content management is really interesting because single source of truth, when I was first introduced to the concept, I was really thinking about the employee's single source of truth. If I'm an employee, where do I update my address? It needs to be in a place, and then that place goes everywhere. The problem with content management is the truth that you're trying to manage is your entire organization's truth that's changing on a second by second basis across every domain in the entire organization. It's not an employee. It's kind of insane for us to think, yes, you can have a single source of truth that's constantly up to date. I do think that's just physics makes that impossible. So we're dealing with some sort of level that isn't a single source of truth, but how does this work? And I think you basically, if you want to have a system that works very well, you're going to need to make peace with that. Again, back to like small library, we can have our employee count. We're going to update that in the system. That's going to work great. But for things like your products, your services, your policies, etc., your odds of getting that into a single source of truth, not great. You're probably more so going to have, this is the source of truth for this information. This is the source of truth for this information. And then if you're really good, you'll be like, okay, well, this is the source of truth that's preferred, but sometimes this one, if it's more up to date, is actually more relevant than this one. And then for this source over here, it depends on the context. In the UK market, we would get it from here, but our US entity actually uses this. And that's kind of the level of source of truth, I think, that is actually the reality for content management.
I agree. And I actually really like that.
Yeah, just sign up to AutoRFP. We'll make a single source of truth powered by AI. But it's just, it's not a thing.
Well, no, but I also think it's good because I think proposal managers already do this, content managers already do this, but there's usually within a company, no matter how large or small it is, there's quite a few other people who are maintaining a knowledge base for their team in a different way. And so it's nice that there are, I don't know, to me, like it kind of like forces you to get to know those people and to talk to them, just see like what that looks like. So it's a good thing.
100%. We should stop asking people to like double entry things all the time, right? They're already doing it, and they're doing better content, honestly, than they're ever going to do. Support teams building help guides, investor relations teams building marketing, decks and like informational docs. They're just so much better than what we're going to be able to. And could you please answer these 100 questions inside of our system based off this template, and they're going to go, yeah, sure, and you're going to sit them down and they're going to type it all in, but they're just going to be so much worse than the product that they just created for real customers or for other stakeholders in the business, like your managing director's report or whatever. It's kind of their last priority.
No, of course. When I worked at AWS, we had almost every single RFP had a bunch of sustainability questions. And so the sustainability team made a really good FAQ document, almost like Q&A pairs on one of our internal websites. But then I had to go in, because we couldn't connect to it, because it was the olden days. I had to go and copy and paste, and they had to tell me when they updated it and where they updated it, so I could then copy and paste it into our knowledge base. And it was, every single time I did it, I died inside, because this is such a waste of time.
100%. And we're just pissing them off as well. We ask them for the site that they already made, and then we ask them on a particular RFP for a response, and then we ask them again because we didn't need to add that to the library because it's not going to be reoccurring until it is. A lot that needs to be done to make content managers' life easier is actually just having to talk to SMEs and go back to them so often just sucks. So anything that we can do, so you have to have as few conversations so they can be polite and you're not having to follow up every couple of days with them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we talk about burnout a lot as proposal people, but I think SMEs we're talking to are also in that same burnout mode. And so anything we can do to make their lives easier as well, and then still create better content in the end, to me, that's the way things should be.
100%. I think we just need to save our credits with those SMEs as well. When an RFP is actually up for a deadline, that's when we kind of spend the social credit that we've built with them, rather than during the content management process trying to be proactive or reactive to something. Let's try and respect their time so that we can ask for it if we really, really need it.
Are there any myths that you think I'm missing? What do you hear a lot that is just straight up not true the vast majority of the time?
Probably less so of a myth, but maybe more of a light grift is a lot of this conversation around, it's oh, I need an agent now, where before I needed a chatbot, and before that now I need Gen AI agent. It's all made up marketing, basically. There are some people that try and define it in different ways. There's just so much marketing around that, and it allows the tools to kind of hide what they're actually able to do or not. What you need is results. You need a tool that does the job of the tool. So yeah, anyway, that's my rant.
No, I love that. I'm here for the hot takes. But I have a follow-up on that. So with agents, regardless of how you define them, people are being sold these all the time, the proposal management tools that say they use agentic AI, and they have agents who do little specific pieces of the proposal process. And that sounds really nice. You're okay, this AI agent is really good at this little piece of the proposal puzzle. That sounds great.
100%. Yeah.
But how do I know that it's actually going to give me the outcome that I'm looking for?
Exactly. I'll take the two things. I mean, I'll kind of give a simple response and then maybe a more technical one just to dive in, because I think, people might be interested. On the side, how do you make sure it does the thing you want it to do? You need to test this thing and make sure it's not smoke and mirrors, and stop being so optimistic about AI, and just look at what's in front of you and is it working or not, and just be realistic, right? Yes, it's not going to cure all of your woes. It should also do what it says, and you should be able to compare different things and make sure it's material, not just, if the agent works like this, then it's real and you can use it, and if it works like this, then no, it's the worst. So yeah, just down to your use case. An interesting part about the agents debate, and what we talk about internally here, is we use agents for different applications. We hate chatbot interfaces. So even though we might build an agent, we won't actually present it in a chatbot format, just because we just think that's so inefficient for most use cases. Yeah. But an interesting thing about agents, as you might know, is the idea with agents is that they choose the tools they use. So they can choose to do a web search, they can choose to search your library, then they can choose kind of the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, which means, they're the opposite of deterministic. So if you want to use them in a workflow, not only are you going to have the large language model generate different responses to the same question every time, but now you've got this agent that's even more wobbly, that's going to use different tools depending on how the sun shines that particular day. And that makes those systems really, really hard to optimize. So for example, when you're thinking about a system that actually generates your responses, that's probably not something that you want in like a free running agent as a first pass, but maybe a super complex workflow that is more deterministic. Again, back to our conversation. I want to prioritize the website and then our library and then the previous responses and then the SharePoint over here. You don't want an agent to decide what it's going to search randomly. You just want that very deterministic so it can be optimized over time. It's actually a lot easier to build an AI agent to respond to RFPs than it is maybe necessarily to like optimize a super complex kind of chain of thought workflows. But for certain things like research, agents are like the only way to go. But for other things, I think they're the worst way to go. I saw Relevance AI, one of the big agent companies, coming out saying this, like, guys, please stop signing up for like things where you want determinism. Like, it's not going to work that well. Like, please go and try something else out, like a Zapier or something. So
Yeah, I love that. I've never heard it described that way. Tell me if this is what I'm hearing. If you have a specific process that needs to do a really specific thing every single time, deterministic, you shouldn't be using an AI agent. But if
not
it doesn't matter, research, then an AI agent is fine.
Exactly. And that's why I use agents for anything that I really wouldn't do super regularly or trying to hyper optimize. But anything we're trying to hyper optimize or really is an important pillar, then we're turning the agent off, deleting that, and then building more of a deterministic workflow around that. Do this, then do this, then do this. It's much easier to optimize a workflow than it is an agent.
Wow. Okay. I've been influenced, Dust. My next question, you probably are sitting on the gold mine of data. And I want to know what's one stat or trend that surprised you or contradicts what you think most people are saying or think works.
Yeah. There's a lot. The quality, I mean, like there's some that are just so obvious, but it's just good to have it reinforced. Is the quality of content via like our like feedback tool in projects is higher than the quality of the content in the libraries a lot of the time because it's not as generic, right? It's more customized. So that's an interesting thing around content reuse and where you maybe should be pulling that from versus using it as a foundation. And the other thing is the migrations point that I brought up before. A lot of people aren't migrating their library. It might be just a good thought exercise for someone right now, if you are managing a library, is if I was to move to a new tool, would I take the library that I'm using now and move it? I'm not saying you have to move. I'm just saying like that's a good thing to think about in your current approach. And maybe how can your even just manual workflow or whatever you're doing just be improved? Maybe you can prune it down a little bit and actually maintain like a little bit less of it. I also see that response lengths are increasing customer over customer. And that's an interesting one. That's a very, very high level metric. And I'm keen to dive into it more. But I imagine that as people are using AI tools, the responses are not only getting more specific, but they're getting longer. And you can imagine if your comparison is particularly in a spreadsheet type response, where you've got your competitor or you as like yes, no, and then you've got the longer response that I think became kind of much more normal in the technical ones where it's like, yes, we do blah, blah, blah via blah, blah, blah. And now people are starting to get to the point where it's like, yes, we do blah, blah, blah via blah, blah, blah. And here's a customer using this feature. And also here's a screenshot and, here's a link to more information. It's really cheeky stuff. Basically all of the people with high win rates are doing that. And they're just, they're doing things like re-exporting the same RFP that's in Excel to Word with these massive long responses. And I think if you're not starting to think about that type of stuff, or you're not finding that you have more detailed, longer responses and your win rate's going down, maybe that's something to look into.
To me, like that is definitely best practice. But why do you think that gives them more of a win rate to have these longer, more detailed responses?
Yeah. I mean, I think it just makes sense to the customer, right? If I'm reading your generic library response versus someone's obviously very customized, thoughtful response because they've had the time to do it, if they've had the content to more easily pull that across, then I'm just going to be like luckier to be on the shortlist. Doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to win maybe the whole deal, but I think definitely for the shortlist rate.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to assume that proposal managers all on board with that. But pre-sales people like solution consultants, solution engineers, they probably don't love that answer. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. And I would say I have the exact opposite, I guess, advice on security. I think you should have the shortest security answers that you possibly can to try and not get clarification questions back to speed up your process. If you're ticking boxes and you're not actually selling, that's going to be better. And then for the pre-sales, there's some argument to say, okay, pre-sales, we've got to start to write longer responses and incorporate some more kind of proof. But depending on the type of product, maybe you're in fintech or something, and it's like, oh no, we probably don't want to do that. Or maybe that's not a good tone or brand to be perceived as more salesy or more informational.
I really like experimenting. I know it's hard to do if you're responding to a multi-million-dollar RFP. But if you say that you have a pretty good relationship with your customer, the stakeholders, you probably know the decision maker, hopefully you do, or why you're responding to the RFP. But let's say you do know them and you kind of have an idea of who they are and the tone of voice they like, and you want to do things differently. Like maybe you're in fintech and normally you give these really straightforward answers that don't have any elaboration or proof points behind them. But maybe you want to start doing that to really stand out from your customers. Do you think it's worth trying, or do you think people should just kind of stay with how they've been doing it before?
Yeah. I mean, doing one sample is good. I mean, particularly if you have a mid-market maybe volume that's I don't know about your biggest deal if it's to test it on that. But yeah, like a good customer. I think it would be good to test it side by side. And that's kind of what I did in my previous role. We took it from a pretty generic response to something more fleshed out, and we would immediately and proactively get feedback from the customer wow, this is really bespoke, and actually I not only learned about your product, I just learned things inside of your RFP. I feel like I can work with you as partners because you're not just ticking the boxes for the product, but you've said and this customer implemented it in this way, and it's, oh, that's cool. I could do that now. They're actually just taking value, which is super weird, right? For a technical RFP to get that kind of value, but to provide that really just put us at the front of everyone. And it's all these big, Fortune 500s, they're not responding like that. They don't care. Have my library, have some, basic edits and hit the road.
Yeah, I'm gonna maybe say something that people will disagree with, unless it is a security question or a DDQ. It doesn't have to be longer necessarily, but the more customized and thought leadership-y that you can make it, that's always good.
Specific numbers.
Yeah.
And then there's the debate, but I'm just going to stand clearly on my side. You should use customer names inside of your responses.
Whoa, people don't want to use customer names.
I know, it's so difficult. The admin, terrific. But yeah, that's my side of it. Just to put me out there and just turn off 50% of the audience right there.
Yeah, Sorry. Get your pitchforks. No, I'm on your side. If you're not doing that, my pitchforks are coming to you. What are you doing? Okay, I learned something new too. All right, crystal ball time, Jasper. It's a year from now. I'm not going to ask the 5-year question because that's ridiculous.
Please don't. Yeah, that's too fast.
No one knows. But in a year from now, what do you think the content management role will look like in a proposal team? Who owns this process? Any information that you think is correct, and we won't hold you to it.
Yeah, no, I'm super bullish on content management. I think it's going to be awesome. I don't foresee an AI tool replacing this. I actually see the inverse happening. We had a team, it was previously called the Tender team, using our platform, that was renamed to the Knowledge team. Intellectual property for a lot of organizations is probably their largest asset by far. Just all the stuff that they've learned, right, over time. And that's kind of what makes them them. And for you to manage the knowledge centrally, and that content not just being for RFPs or proposals or kind of shared around a little bit, sure, but only a few people know and use it, to, oh, this person, our organization has connected all of our different information streams. They manage the really important stuff. They work with all the subject matter experts, and I can go into this tool. I can upload any kind of questions like RFPs, RFIs, securities, whatever. And I can actually message this content they've put together in Slack or in Teams, and they've just made something that is way outside of what we're talking about in proposal management. This is a core business. I don't even know how big that becomes, but I can foresee teams growing rather than shrinking and being no, this content management / what is I think going to be called a knowledge team is 10 dedicated people where it used to be 5, because and maybe actually other roles have ended up not being that useful. Like, salespeople don't have to manually search all this stuff anymore. So we actually have less salespeople who have invested more into the knowledge team because they have leverage. Everyone in the org leverages what they kind of put together. So I think content management is going to be awesome. And I think it's going to be so much better than any time in the past. As long as you get on the wave, right? It's just like, it's going to suck. Like the learning is going to suck. Some of the tech you try is going to suck, but it all is going that way. So I definitely get on the train, try it out, start thinking about it more, writing about it, talking about it, and then trying some of these like proof of concepts, trying some of these things and seeing if there's a real ROI. But, be skeptical and it should be a fun ride.
What skills do you think that they need to learn now to be a part of that team in the future?
Yeah. It is a hard one. A lot of people have been thinking like, I should do a prompt engineering course and things like that. And I think that's the opposite of whatever the right direction is nearly. Like, yes, that's a good tool. That's going to be good day to day for anyone, but it's not the thing when we're talking about like hyper specialized roles. I do think, and maybe I'm just too biased, I'm just too in my box, but I do think it's like explore these tools and like how they work and then how they might work in your org and like just try and get some exposure to them, honestly. And even like ChatGPT just released like something where they integrate with Google Drive and like a few other bits and pieces. That will be like probably a cool way to test like a basic version of that type of system and start to get a feel for it.
Yeah.
And I think just working with what you've currently got as much as you can, right? Like, fix your content library. See if there's some smart way that you can use sources from SMEs rather than them contributing to you and see if you can just do that in small ways to start.
I mean, do you think part of this is also having that conversation with your sales leaders or knowledge leaders, whoever that might be in your organization, and just like seeing what they're thinking about it and then kind of seeing how you can help them?
That's an interesting thing. I think if you can, it's crazy to see the budget reductions sometimes on like RFP and content management teams. It just doesn't make sense. And it's so weird when we go into kind of sell our platform, we're talking to these teams, they all get it and everything. Then they're like, we can't get a budget. And then one session with the CRO, with the CEO, or something completely flipped. Like, oh no, we need to give all the money. Love you. This is a great idea.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think if I was on a content team or doing that like now, I would actually start to think of maybe a vision of what you could move towards and then start communicating that to your peers, managers, etc. And be like, hey, like, did you know, like, yes, we've got this kind of current setup, but I think in the future it'd be cool to do like X project or try this thing out and kind of just be visionary in the way that you want to use AI. Because a lot of like CEOs and managers right now are looking for all of these different AI things. They're randomly buying tools that don't even know what they do, getting some pretty rough results. But thankfully for content management, you're in one of the few spaces where AI is like ready, like right now today. The AI kind of sales development rep, like not so much, but there's a lot of stuff that's like really cool that you can actually pull from now. And so I think maybe, having a bit of a vision, just communicating it internally, having a slide, like making a slide deck and kind of running through, hey, here's all like the different stuff that people are doing, how people think content management will evolve over time. You could try and pitch my vision of the knowledge team if you agree. I think this is all good stuff to communicate, even if you're not doing like a particular initiative. Just say, hey, we're aware of this. We're obviously across like AI and how it's going to be used. We've got a cool vision of the future and we're all like engaged. Like we're not an old dusty team who just manages some software or Excel spreadsheet or whatever. We're actively engaged, even if you don't have a budget or any kind of thing to do right now.
Yeah. No, I like that a lot. Yeah, like where can we learn a little bit more about AutoRFP and what you guys do and how you can support not just in the knowledge management, but in the whole RFP response process?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like luckily we just registered our name as the website. So it's AutoRFP.ai. It's pretty. Yeah, we only focus on like certain very, very particular areas as well. So sorry if you're in like construction, certainly not the platform for you. Certainly if you're in software or finance, that kind of thing is like a lot of like the source of truth. People that manage like content libraries, that makes sense. Construction, other areas where that's pretty bespoke, like it's hard. Check it all out there. We're pretty transparent with everything. And also just reach out, like really keen to connect with more of the community. Maybe you fervently, disagree with some of my points, would love to hear it and take some punches. But if you agree and have anything to add as well, it'd be cool to hear from everyone.
Yeah, and I can confirm Jasper is just a joy to talk to. He's super nice and he knows what he's talking about. So don't be afraid to reach out to him just because he has a scary title. He's a nice guy. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jasper. And everyone, reach out to Jasper. He's great. He posts a lot of really good content as well.
I'd love to have a chat.
Thank you so much, Jasper. It was lovely to talk to you.
Awesome. Thank you very much.